I cared for my paraplegic wife for 6 years. 6 long years, during which I woke up before sunrise, slept on the sofa in the living room, and lived a life full of sacrifice and unconditional love. Until one Thursday morning at St. Luke's Medical Center here in Chicago, Dr. Hagen stepped out of the examination room with an expression I will never forget. He came closer, looked around as if he was afraid of being overheard, and whispered very quietly, "Mr. Schneider, you need to call the police right now." In that moment, my world began to collapse, but I didn't yet know that the truth would be far worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. But before we continue, please check if you have subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you are watching this video from right now. My name is Arthur Schneider. I am 62 years old and have lived my entire life in the Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago. I am retired from the Chicago Transit Authority, the CTA. For 35 years, I worked as a maintenance technician for the L trains. I was never a man of many words. I always preferred to get things done with my hands, to fix what was broken. When my wife Sonya had the accident, I thought I would be able to fix our lives too. I was completely wrong. It all began on a March afternoon in 2017. I was at work in the maintenance bay for the Blue Line when Frieda, Sonya's sister, called. Her voice was trembling so much that I could barely understand her. "Art, you have to come to Northwestern Memorial immediately. Sonya had an accident. She was run over on Michigan Avenue." I dropped everything and ran. I took the first L train, got off at the Chicago station, and crossed the street without even looking left or right. My heart was pounding so hard it almost jumped out of my chest. When I arrived at the emergency room, I met Frieda in the hallway. Her eyes were swollen from crying so much. "How is she?" was the first thing I asked. Frieda held my hands tightly. "Art, she's alive. But the doctors say it's serious, very serious. The spinal cord is affected." I felt my knees go weak. Spinal cord. I didn't understand much about medicine, but I knew that was bad. An orderly took me to the intensive care unit. Through the window, I saw my Sonya, intubated and hooked up to machines that beeped incessantly. The attending physician, a man around 40 with graying hair at the temples and thin glasses, called me into a separate room. "Mr. Schneider, I'll tell you straight, as I know you prefer that." I nodded, preparing my heart for what was to come. "Your wife suffered severe trauma to the thoracic region of her spine. The impact from being run over caused a fracture with spinal cord compression. We operated for 6 hours and did what was in our power, but the prognosis is unfortunately not favorable." "What does that mean, doctor?" My voice sounded hoarse and thick. He took a deep breath before continuing. "It means that your wife will remain paraplegic. She has lost movement from the waist down. She will never be able to walk again. With intensive physical therapy, she might regain some sensation, but the ability to walk is unlikely." The words hit me like an anvil. My Sonya, who loved to go swing dancing on Sundays, who effortlessly walked up and down the steps of our neighborhood, was now confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. I spent 3 days in an uncomfortable chair in the waiting room. I couldn't go home and leave her there alone. When I was finally allowed to enter the ICU, I held her hand carefully, as if it would break. "Hello, my love, I'm here. You're not alone." She was sedated and couldn't answer, but I swore she squeezed my hand lightly. Maybe it was just my desperate imagination, wanting to believe in a connection. 2 weeks later, Sonya was moved to a regular room. She was conscious again, but her gaze had changed. The former sparkle was gone. It was an empty, lost, frightened look. The doctor explained that she could move her arms, her head, and her upper body. But from the waist down, nothing responded. Absolutely nothing. They did several tests, pricked her legs with needles, applied electrical stimuli. No reaction. Sonya cried silently during the examinations, and I felt like the most useless man in the world because I could do nothing to ease her suffering. After a month in the hospital, it was time to bring Sonya home. The hospital's social worker explained everything I would need: a wheelchair, grab bars in the bathroom, a hospital bed, incontinence diapers, prescription medications. The list was long and expensive. My CTA pension was decent, but all of this would break our budget. Frieda offered to help financially. "Art, she's my sister. I'll contribute as much as I can." I thanked her, but I had a foolish pride that didn't allow me to easily accept money from others. I transformed our living room into a bedroom, sold the old sofa and the TV stand, and set up a completely adapted area for her. The hospital bed stood in the middle with enough space on both sides to make care easier. I installed a small television on the wall at the perfect height so she could see it while lying down. Next to it, I placed a small table with medications, organized in boxes separated by time of day. Every detail was thought out to make her life as comfortable as possible. The first night at home was the hardest. Sonya cried so much that I didn't know what to do. "Why me, Art? Why did this happen to me?" she repeated, sobbing. I held her hand, trying to be strong, but inside I was torn apart too. "I don't know, my love. Sometimes life is unfair, but I'm here. I will take care of you. No matter how long it takes, we will get through this together." She looked at me with her brown, tear-filled eyes and whispered, "I don't want to be a burden to you." "You were not and never will be a burden," I answered, convinced. And it was true. Sonya had been my partner for 38 years. We had met when I was 24 and she was 22, at a Halloween party at the community center. She looked beautiful in her flowered yellow dress as she danced with her friends. I gathered the courage to ask her to dance once, and from then on we were inseparable. We married the following year, had our son Morris, and built a simple but happy life. I wouldn't abandon her now, in the moment she needed me the most. My routine changed completely. I woke up every day at 5 a.m., even before the alarm clock rang. The first thing I did was to check if she was okay, if she had slept well, if she needed anything. "Good morning, my flower," I always said with a smile, even when exhaustion weighed on my shoulders. Usually she answered with a nod. She rarely smiled back. Depression had a firm grip on her, and that hurt me more than anything. Bathing always happened in the morning, after coffee. I heated the water in the bathroom to a comfortable temperature with an electric heater I bought just for this. I had learned the correct technique from the nurse who was with us for the first few days. Support her body carefully. Never pull on her arms. Always hold her back and head. The entire process took about 40 minutes. She didn't like being naked in front of me, even after so many years of marriage. "This isn't dignified, Art," she would say. I would reply that true love didn't see that, but I understood how she felt. After the bath, I dressed her in comfortable clothes, always choosing the colors she liked best. Sonya had always been particular about her appearance. She liked to look good. That's why I made sure to comb her hair neatly, apply the light lipstick she asked for, and spray her with the rose-scented perfume she loved. "You are beautiful," I would say, and she would give me a sad half-smile. I positioned her in bed with extra pillows at her back. I turned on the TV to a cooking show she liked to watch. Breakfast was simple: toast with butter, coffee with milk, sometimes a few cut fruits. I fed her, even though she could eat by herself. At first she complained. She said she could hold the spoon, but I insisted. I wanted her to feel cared for and loved. The medications followed right after. 3 different pills for pain, 2 for circulation, a blood thinner, and vitamins. Everything was noted on a chart I had made myself, with exact times so I wouldn't forget anything. Frieda, Sonya's sister, now came every Tuesday and Thursday. She worked as a manager at a clothing store in Wicker Park and always found a way to stop by on her lunch break to visit her sister. She was a 57-year-old woman with short, bleached blonde hair, always well-dressed and perfumed. I liked it when she came because Sonya became a little more animated. They talked about trivial things, remembered childhood stories from Indiana, but I started to notice strange things during Frieda's visits. She always asked me to be alone with Sonya for a few minutes. "Art, why don't you step out for a bit? Go buy some bread? Grab a coffee? I want to talk to my sister about girl stuff." I found that natural. I was never suspicious. I went to the bakery on the corner, bought fresh bread, and chatted for about 15 minutes with Mr. Jair, the baker I had known since my childhood. When I came back, I would find the two of them sunken in silence, and Sonya always seemed more tense. One day I asked, "Is everything all right between you two? You're different after Frieda leaves." Sonya avoided my gaze. "Everything is normal, Art. I just miss the time when we were kids. Things like that make me emotional." I didn't press further, but it gnawed at me. Something wasn't right. The intuition of a man who has lived with the same person for almost 40 years is not easily mistaken. Something was being hidden from me. Besides Frieda, we occasionally received visits from our son Morris. He lived in Denver, worked as a civil engineer for a large construction company, was married, and had 2 small children. He came to visit us once a month, always on Sundays. His visits were marked by guilt. "Dad, I should be here more often to help you." I understood. He had his own life, his own family. "Your place is with your wife and your children, Morris. I'm managing with your mother." But deep down, the distance hurt. It was on an August morning, almost 6 months after the accident, when I found a medication vial I didn't recognize. I was tidying up Sonya's nightstand, sorting the week's pills into organizer boxes. That's when I saw the vial hidden behind the tissue box. It was a small brown glass bottle with no commercial label, just a white handwritten note. "Take 1 tablet in the morning." There was no name of the medication, no name of the doctor, nothing. "Sonya, what is this medication?" I asked, showing her the vial. Her reaction was immediate and revealing. Her eyes widened, her face turned pale. She began to stutter. "That's... Frieda brought it. She said it was for the pain." But Sonya was never a good liar. I knew every expression on her face. "For pain? But you already take 3 different pain medications. Why did Frieda give you another one without me knowing? She's not a doctor." Sonya didn't answer, just looked out the window. I put the vial in my pocket. "I'll ask Frieda what this is when she comes on Thursday." Sonya was restless for the rest of the day. She constantly asked for water. She barely ate anything at lunch. I didn't understand what was wrong, but it reinforced my suspicion that something very wrong was happening behind my back. As a man who had dedicated his whole life to fixing things, I had to find out what was broken in this story. 2 days later, when Frieda came for her usual visit, I confronted her immediately. I showed her the vial. "What is this, Frieda? Why are you giving Sonya medication without me knowing?" She became flustered and also began to stutter. "Art, calm down, that's just a natural supplement, nothing special. A friend of mine who works in a pharmacy recommended it to me, to help her with the muscle cramps." The explanation was too vague and didn't convince me at all. "Natural supplements don't come in unlabeled bottles, Frieda. This looks like a prescription medication. I'm going to have it checked by a doctor." Her expression changed completely, from defensive to aggressive. "You don't trust me, Art? Me, her own sister, who has been taking care of her since she was a child? You think I would give my own sister something that would harm her?" Her voice rose, and for the first time in all these months, I felt a real hostility directed at me. I made an appointment with Dr. Hagen, the neurologist who had been handling Sonya's case since the accident. He practiced in a private office in Lincoln Square, a small but well-organized place with diplomas on the walls and a friendly receptionist. I took the mysterious vial with me. Sonya didn't want to go. She found 1,000 excuses. "Art, you don't have to take me. Everything is fine. I don't need an examination right now." But I insisted. Something inside me screamed that I had to keep this appointment. Dr. Hagen was a serious, methodical man. He examined Sonya with his usual attention, performed the routine neurological tests, checked reflexes and sensitivity. "There are no significant changes since the last consultation," he noted in the medical file. Then I showed him the vial. "Doctor, I found this medication with my wife. She said her sister-in-law gave it to her, but it has no identification. Can you tell me what it is?" He took the vial, opened it, examined the small white pills and smelled them. "I'll have to run a lab analysis to be sure, but judging by the appearance and the characteristic smell, this appears to be a high-potency benzodiazepine. These are prescription drugs with the red warning label, used for severe anxiety or as sedatives. Who prescribed this for your wife?" I looked at Sonya, who was red with shame and nervousness. "No one prescribed it, doctor. Her sister brought it," the doctor frowned. "That is highly irregular. Benzodiazepines must not be administered without a medical prescription, and certainly not in this kind of homemade packaging. What effect would this medication have on a person in her condition?" I asked, a cold feeling in my stomach. Dr. Hagen hesitated before answering. "Besides the obvious sedation, benzodiazepines, with prolonged and improper dosage, can cause excessive muscle relaxation, diminished reflexes, and extreme drowsiness. In more severe cases, they can even simulate symptoms of paralysis in muscles that might be partially functional." His words echoed in my head like an alarm bell. "Simulate symptoms of paralysis. Doctor, what exactly are you trying to say?" My voice was trembling. He looked at Sonya and then at me. "Mr. Schneider, I would like to perform some more in-depth examinations on your wife. A new MRI, an electroneuromyography, and some tests that we didn't conduct routinely. I'm beginning to think that something in this picture doesn't add up." Sonya began to cry softly. I held her hand, confused, afraid, without fully understanding what was happening. "Can she do these tests today?" I asked, worried. "I will try to fit you in this week. It's urgent." The doctor made a call, spoke with colleagues, and managed to schedule the examinations for 2 days later at St. Luke's Medical Center, the same hospital where she had been after the accident. We drove home in complete silence. Sonya wouldn't look me in the eye. Her face was turned toward the taxi window. Tears ran silently down her cheeks. At home, after I had put her to bed, I sat down next to her and took her hands in mine. "Sonya, you have to tell me what's going on. I am your husband, your partner for almost 40 years. If something is wrong, something you're hiding, I need to know. No matter what it is, we'll solve it together." She finally looked me in the eyes, and what I saw there frightened me. It wasn't just sadness or shame. It was fear, real fear. Art, she began, but was interrupted by the ringing of the intercom. It was Frieda. "Let me up. I need to talk to you." There was something in her voice, an urgency that made me even more worried. I pressed the button to unlock the building's front door. 3 minutes later, Frieda entered the apartment with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't the helpful, loving Frieda, but a different person. Hard, determined, almost threatening. "Were you at the doctor's today?" was the first thing Frieda said. It wasn't a question, but a statement. "How do you know that?" I asked suspiciously. "Sonya sent me a message," she answered dryly. I looked at my wife, who looked away again. "So what?" "It's a routine checkup." Frieda laughed briefly, without humor. "Routine checkups don't involve bringing the bottle of pills you found, Art. You shouldn't have interfered." "I shouldn't have interfered, Frieda. She is my wife. It is my duty to take care of her, and that includes knowing what the hell kind of medication you two are hiding from me." My voice was louder than usual. Frieda came closer. Her index finger pointed at my face. "You don't understand anything, you thickhead. You think you're so good, so devoted, but you have no idea what Sonya has been through, what she is still going through." That made no sense. "What are you talking about?" Then Sonya spoke. Her voice was weak but firm. "Art, sit down, I have to tell you something." I sat down on the chair next to the bed. My heart was racing. Frieda stood with her arms crossed in a defensive posture. Sonya took several deep breaths before she began. "The accident wasn't an ordinary accident. I wasn't run over by just any driver." She took a long pause, the tears returning to her eyes. "It was Egon. Egon." The name hit my chest like a knife. Egon was Sonya's ex-boyfriend, a relationship she had before she met me. A violent, possessive guy who had never accepted the breakup. In the first years of our marriage, he had shown up a few times, had threatened, said Sonya belonged to him. No one else could have her. We had even filed a police report. We had gotten a restraining order. After about 5 years, he disappeared. We thought he had moved on. "Egon ran you over on purpose?" I asked, incredulous. Sonya nodded. He had been following me for months before the accident. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you. You already had so much on your mind with work. He called me from different numbers, sent me messages saying he would make me pay for choosing you. That day on Michigan Avenue, he drove the car straight at me. There was no braking, nothing. It was intentional." I was paralyzed, processing this staggering information. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't the police arrest him?" Frieda answered for her. "Because he fled, Art. On the day of the accident, he hit Sonya and sped off. Nobody could get the license plate. Nobody could identify him. Sonya was unconscious and couldn't give a statement. When she woke up days later, we decided, out of fear he would come back to finish the job, that it was better to do nothing." "Do nothing?" "The guy tried to kill my wife, and you think doing nothing is the solution?" I was angry, confused, hurt. How could they have hidden this from me? Sonya reached out and touched my arm. "Art, don't you understand? He is dangerous. If we had reported him, he could have come after us. Not just after me, but after you, after Morris. I preferred to stay quiet and let him believe he had succeeded in destroying me." That made a twisted kind of sense, but it still didn't explain the mysterious medications. And what does this bottle of pills have to do with it? I insisted. Frieda answered. After the accident, Sonya was terrified. She had terrible nightmares about Egon every night. She woke up screaming. The hospital doctor prescribed anti-anxiety medication, but the dose wasn't enough. I have a friend who's a pharmacist who could get a stronger formulation without a prescription to help her sleep. The explanation was plausible, but something still didn't fit together perfectly. All right, but why hide it from me? I could have gone to the doctor with her, gotten a proper prescription, done things the right way. Sonya squeezed my hand. Because you would have asked questions. Because you would have wanted to understand why I needed so many sedatives. And then I would have had to tell you about Egon, about the threats, about everything. I didn't want you to carry that burden too. I sighed deeply, trying to organize my thoughts. A part of me understood their twisted logic, but another part felt betrayed by the concealment. 2 days later, I brought Sonya to St. Luke's Medical Center to undergo the examinations ordered by Dr. Hagen. She was too calm, nervous, her hands trembling as I helped her get dressed. It's going to be fine, my love. They're just routine tests to make sure everything is under control. I tried to reassure her, but I was also anxious inside. The whole story with Egon and the hidden medications had left me very agitated. The MRI was the first test. It lasted almost an hour. I bit my nails in the waiting room, something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. Afterward, they performed the electroneuromyography, a test that measures the electrical activity of the muscles and nerves. I watched as they inserted those fine needles into Sonya's legs. She didn't even flinch, which confirmed that she really felt nothing there, or so it seemed. After 3 hours of tests, she was finally released, and they told me the results would be ready in 2 days. We came home exhausted. Sonya slept for the rest of the afternoon. I used the time to call Morris and tell him about Egon, the threats and everything I had found out. My son was beside himself. Dad, what? Nobody told me any of this. I'm her son. I had the right to know. I agreed with him. It was your mother's and your aunt's decision, my son. They thought they were protecting us. Morris took a deep breath on the other end of the line. We have to go to the police and file a report, reopen the case. I'm waiting for the test results first, I replied. Dr. Hagen has become suspicious because of the medications Frieda gave your mother. I want to know everything exactly before I do anything. Morris reluctantly agreed and promised to visit us on the weekend. After I hung up, I thought, what if Egon was still out there? Watching, waiting for an opportunity? The thought made me paranoid. I started paying attention to strange cars on the street and unfamiliar people near the building. On Thursday, Frieda came to visit as usual. I was still somewhat suspicious of her because of the whole story with the hidden medications, but I tried to be polite. She came with a bag of fruit, bringing oranges for Sonya's juice. I thanked her and went into the kitchen to prepare it. From there, I could hear the two of them talking quietly in the living room. I couldn't understand the words, but the tone was conspiratorial, whispered, secretive. That unsettled me again. On Friday morning at 9:40 a.m., the phone rang. It was Dr. Hagen. Mr. Schneider, I need to speak with you in my office today, preferably this morning. Your wife's test results are in, and I need to talk to you in person. His tone was serious, too official. Did something happen, doctor? I asked. He hesitated. I would prefer to speak in person. Can you come at 11? I agreed. My heart was already racing. I told Sonya about the call. She turned pale. Art, I don't want to come with you. You go alone, talk to the doctor, and tell me afterward. I found it strange, but I didn't force her. Fine, but I'll call Frieda to stay with you while I'm gone. I called. Frieda said she would leave work and be there in half an hour. I arrived at Dr. Hagen's office 10 minutes early. The receptionist offered me coffee, but I declined. My stomach was too cramped. When I was finally called in, I found the doctor behind his desk, a thick file folder with test results in front of him. He greeted me with a firm handshake, but his expression was serious and concerned. Sit down. I need to show you something. He projected the MRI images onto an illuminated screen on the wall, pointing to Sonya's spinal area. Look here, this is the current image from 2 days ago. And here, he placed another image next to it. This is the MRI that was taken 6 months ago, immediately after the accident. I looked at both. But to me, They were just gray and white patches without much meaning. What am I supposed to see, doctor? The spinal cord injury. You see it here on the first image. This dark area, this tear of the nerve fibers, that was the cause of your wife's paralysis. I'll enlarge it. But look at the new image. He pointed to the same spot. I strained my eyes, trying to see the difference. The injury is gone, Art. The spinal cord is intact, completely intact. His words took a few seconds to process in my brain. What do you mean, intact? The doctor sat back down and folded his hands on the desk. What I am telling you is that, neurologically, there is no physical reason why your wife is paraplegic. Either the injury was never as severe as the initial diagnosis suggested, or there was a regeneration, which is extremely rare, almost impossible. But there's more. He opened another part of the folder. The electroneuromyography shows normal electrical activity in her leg muscles. The nerves are conducting impulses perfectly. The muscles are responding to stimuli. I felt as if the floor had disappeared from under my feet. But she doesn't move her legs, doctor. Not a single millimeter. In 6 months, I have never seen her move anything from the waist down. Dr. Hagen looked me directly in the eyes. Exactly. And that's why I asked you to come alone, Art. In my professional opinion, your wife is not actually paralyzed. She could be simulating the paralysis, possibly under the effect of sedatives and muscle relaxants that inhibit voluntary movements. Simulating. The word seemed obscene, impossible. Doctor, why would she do that? Why would someone pretend to be paralyzed for 6 months? The doctor sighed. There are various possibilities. Severe psychological trauma, a conversion disorder where the mind blocks movement as an emotional defense, or in rarer cases, conscious manipulation for a reason unknown to us. And then there's this bottle of medication you brought me. I had it analyzed. The doctor picked up a sheet of paper with the lab analysis results. It's high-potency benzodiazepines combined with muscle relaxants, normally prescribed for severe cases of spasticity. Taken regularly, these medications can indeed cause a person to have extreme difficulty moving their limbs, even if they are neurologically perfect. It's as if the muscles simply don't receive the brain's command effectively. My head was spinning. So Frieda, her sister, has been drugging Sonya to keep her paralyzed? It sounded crazy to say it out loud. The doctor held up his hands. I cannot make that accusation without proof. What I am saying is that the tests show your wife is physically capable of walking, but something is stopping her. It could be psychological, it could be chemical, it could be a combination of both. Art, I need you to call the police. The police? I repeated like an idiot. Why? The doctor closed the file folder with the tests. Because if there is a possibility that your wife is being medicated without proper consent, that is a crime. If she is being artificially kept in a state of dependency, this could be false imprisonment and abuse. And then there's the matter of the accident. You told me it might have been intentional. All of this must be properly investigated. I left the office in shock. I sat down on a bench in the small plaza in front of the building and tried to collect my thoughts. Sonya could walk. Maybe she always could have. Frieda's medications were keeping her sedated, unable to move. But why? What could be the reason? Money? I didn't have money. My pension was modest. Sonya had been receiving disability benefits from Social Security since the accident, but it wasn't a fortune. It made no sense. I called Morris. Son, you need to come to Chicago urgently. Something very serious is happening. I briefly explained the tests and the doctor's conclusion to him. Morris was silent for a long time. Dad, I'm getting in the car right now. I'll be there in 2 hours. Don't do anything until I arrive, and don't leave Aunt Frieda alone with Mom. His tone was commanding, like someone used to making quick decisions. I thanked him and hung up. When I got home, I saw Frieda just leaving the building. She seemed nervous and agitated. Art, Sonya's asleep. I gave her a pain pill and she dozed off. I immediately became alert. Which medication, Frieda? She stuttered. The usual one. The one for muscle cramps. I ran into the apartment, leaving her standing on the sidewalk. I went straight to the improvised bedroom in the living room. Sonya was lying deeply asleep in the bed. Her breathing was slow. She barely reacted when I shook her lightly. On the nightstand, I saw the open bottle. I counted the pills. 2 were missing. She had taken 2 of those high-potency medications. I grabbed my phone and called Dr. Hagen. Doctor, my wife took 2 tablets of the medication we analyzed. She is heavily sedated. What should I do? His voice sounded alarmed. 2 tablets, Art? The maximum dose is half a pill per day. 2 can lead to respiratory depression. You need to bring her to the hospital right now. I immediately called 911. I explained the situation. They gave it high priority. The ambulance arrived in 12 minutes. The paramedics entered and checked Sonya's vital signs. Her oxygen saturation was low. They put an oxygen mask on her and moved her onto the stretcher. Are you riding with us? The paramedic asked. Yes, I'm coming. I grabbed her bag with the documents, the medication bottle as evidence, and got into the ambulance. On the way to St. Luke's Medical Center, I held Sonya's hand and watched the monitors with her heartbeat. The paramedics worked efficiently, constantly checking her blood pressure and breathing. Is she going to be okay? I asked. We got here in time, but it was close. Another half hour and it could have been serious. Those words hit me like a punch. Frieda had administered that dose intentionally. She had tried to kill her own sister. At the hospital, they took Sonya straight to the ER. I stayed in the waiting room, my legs trembling, my heart racing. I called Morris and explained that we were at the hospital. Dad, I'm 20 minutes away. Hang on. As I hung up, I saw Frieda come through the ER doors. She saw me and ran over. Art, how is she? What happened? I looked at her with a coldness I had never felt before. You know perfectly well what happened, Frieda. What are you talking about? Frieda tried to act innocent, but I knew her game now. You gave your own sister an overdose of medication. The doctors said she took enough to cause respiratory arrest. You tried to kill her. The words came out harsh and accusing. Frieda looked around and saw that other people in the waiting room were watching us. Should we talk outside? She whispered. We went outside to the hospital parking lot. She lit a cigarette, trembling. You don't understand the situation. I took a step toward her. Then explained to me why I just came from the neurologist's office, and he showed me the tests. Sonya isn't paralyzed. She never was. You are drugging her with these medications to keep her in a wheelchair. Why? Frieda took a long drag from her cigarette, blowing the smoke out slowly. For a moment, I thought she would continue to deny it. But then something in her expression changed. It was as if a mask was falling. You want to know the truth, Art? The truth is that Sonya doesn't deserve your devotion, your love. Any of it. The hatred in her voice frightened me. What are you talking about? She's your sister. My half-sister. Frieda spat the word out as if it were poison. The daughter from my father's second marriage. His favorite. The beautiful one. The talented one. I was the oldest daughter who took care of him when he got sick, but she was the one he pinned all his hopes on. All the money. I began to understand that there was something much deeper and more pathological to this story. That doesn't justify anything you've done. Frieda threw the cigarette on the ground and stomped on it hard. When our father died, he left her everything. The house in Indiana, the savings, everything. He left me nothing, just a letter that said I was strong and could manage on my own. Do you know what it's like to be pushed aside your entire life? I shook my head. So you've been getting revenge this whole time? Drugging her, making her dependent, destroying her life because of an inheritance? That's not all, Frieda continued. Now she seemed to want to unload everything. Sonya always had everything. Beauty, talent, you. Even when she was paralyzed, she still had you. This perfect husband taking care of her day and night. I never had anyone like you. I never had anything. The twisted logic of envy and resentment finally revealed itself completely. So you decided to destroy her life. Before Frieda could answer, Morris came running across the parking lot. Dad, where's Mom? He stopped short when he saw Frieda. His expression changed instantly. What are you doing here? I briefly explained the situation to him. Morris turned red with rage. What did you do to my mother? He took a threatening step toward Frieda. I grabbed his arm. Calm down, son. Let justice handle this. A doctor came out of the ER and called for us. Family of Mrs. Sonya Schneider. We hurried over to him. How is she, doctor? My voice trembled. She is stable. We pumped her stomach. We administered the antidote. She is responding well, but I need to talk to you about something we've discovered. He looked at me specifically. You are the husband, I affirmed. Please come with me. He nodded to Morris. We entered a separate room. The doctor, a young man around 30, closed the door behind us. During the emergency procedures, we ran some additional tests. Your wife is conscious now and wants to speak with you. But first, I need to inform you about something important. He opened a file. The neurological exams we conducted here confirm what her chart indicated. There is no spinal cord injury. Your wife is fully capable of walking. Morris interrupted. Wait, my mother can walk? The doctor nodded. Not only can she likely always could have. The tests indicate that the original injury from the accident was superficial and caused temporary trauma that should have healed within a few weeks. What has kept her immobilized was a combination of inappropriate medication and, forgive the bluntness, her decision not to move. That sounded even more shocking hearing it from another doctor. Why would she do that? Morris asked the question that was hammering in my head. The doctor hesitated. She needs to explain that to you personally. But I can say that in cases of severe trauma, the mind often finds ways to protect itself that can seem irrational. And when there is external manipulation through medication, as appears to be the case here, the situation becomes even more complex. She is asking to speak with Mr. Schneider alone. I was taken to a private room where Sonya was lying. She was still pale but awake. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Art. Her voice was weak and hoarse. I sat down on the chair next to the bed and held her hand. For the first time in 6 months, I felt anger toward my wife. Anger mixed with confusion, grief, love. Explain this to me, Sonya. Explain to me why you did this to me. To Morris. To our family. She cried for a few minutes before she could speak. I was so scared, Art. So scared you can't even imagine. She took a deep breath, wiping the tears with the back of her hand. When I woke up in the hospital after the accident, the first thing I heard was Egon's voice. He was in the hallway, disguised as a doctor, and he whispered in my ear, "Next time, I'll finish it. And if you tell anyone, I'll kill Art and Morris first and make you watch." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Sonya, why didn't you tell me?" She squeezed my hand. "Because I believed him. I know what he's like. I know what he's capable of. When the doctor said I was paraplegic, it was almost a relief. If I was in a wheelchair, an invalid, he wouldn't be interested in me anymore. I wouldn't be a threat to his sick ego. I wouldn't be the woman who rejected him. I would just be someone pitiful, and maybe he would leave me alone. But the tests show you weren't really paralyzed." She nodded slowly. "I know. In the first few days, I really couldn't move my legs. I think it was the trauma of the accident and the fear. But after about 2 weeks, I started to feel a tingling. I could move my toes when no one was watching. But then Frieda came with those medications." Her expression turned bitter. "She said they were for anxiety, to help me sleep. And you weren't suspicious?" I asked, incredulous. Sonya avoided my gaze. "Not at first. But then I noticed that the medications made my muscles too weak. I couldn't move even if I wanted to. When I confronted Frieda, she said it was better this way, that I would be protected from Egon if I stayed paralyzed. And a part of me agreed, Art. A part that preferred staying safe in this bed under your care, rather than taking the risk of that monster coming back. So you decided to use me. You decided to make our lives hell, because you were scared." The words were harsher than I had intended. Sonya started to cry again. "I know it was selfish. I know it was cowardly. But you don't understand the terror that man represents. He swore to destroy me in every way imaginable. And when I saw how devoted you were to me, how you took care of me with so much love, a part of me thought, at least we are together like this. We are safe. Safe." I almost shouted. "Sonya, I have slept for 6 months of my life on an uncomfortable sofa. I've woken up in the middle of the night, given up everything, to take care of a woman who was pretending she couldn't walk. Do you know what a burden that was? The exhaustion, the worry, the guilt for sometimes feeling angry at the situation?" She sobbed louder. "I know, and there is no excuse for what I did. But I swear, Art. I swear. In the beginning, I really thought I was paralyzed. By the time I realized I could move, I was already so entangled in the lie, so addicted to the medications Frieda was giving me, that I didn't know how to get out." I took a deep breath and tried to control my anger. "And Frieda, what exactly is her role in this?" Sonya wiped her face. "At first, she really seemed to want to help me, but over the months I noticed that she liked having me dependent on her. She liked to control my medications, to decide when I could receive visitors and when not, to be the intermediary between me and the world. And then there were the comments she made. What comments? Sonya hesitated. About you. About how you were too devoted a husband. How she never had the luck to have a man like that. How I didn't deserve all that love after everything I had done. At first, I thought it was just silly envy. But then I understood that it was something deeper. She wanted to see me suffer, Art. She wanted to punish me for having a life that, in her opinion, I didn't deserve. And today? Why did she give you that absurd dose of medication? Sonya turned even paler. Because last night, after you left to buy bread, I told her I was thinking about stopping the medications, that I wanted to try to walk again, to get my life back. She got angry, said I was ungrateful, that I would ruin everything. When she came this morning, she forced these 2 tablets into my mouth. I tried to spit them out, but she held my mouth shut until I swallowed them. We were silent for long minutes. I processed everything I had heard, tried to separate anger from understanding, love from disappointment. Finally, Sonya spoke again. Her voice was weak. I understand if you want to divorce me. I understand if you never want to see me again. I destroyed your trust, wasted months of your life, but I have to tell you that I never stopped loving you for a single moment. Everything I did, as wrong as it was done out of fear of losing you. I looked at her. This woman I had known for almost 40 years. In her, there was still the girl in the yellow dress dancing at the community center. But I also saw a stranger, capable of elaborate lies, of manipulation, of immeasurable suffering for the one who loved her most. I need time, Sonya. I need time to process all this. She nodded, tears running silently down her face. I understand. I left the room and met Morris in the hallway. And Dad, what did she say? I told him in short. My son was stunned, so she could walk the whole time and chose not to, out of fear of a psychopathic ex-boyfriend. I confirmed with a nod. And Aunt Frieda was in the middle of it, manipulating everything, drugging her. Morris punched the wall. This is insane. Utter insanity. Where is Frieda? I asked. Morris pointed to the waiting room. I left her there, under the supervision of a security guard I requested from the hospital. But we have to call the police, Dad. She tried to kill Mom today. And the whole story with Egon, that has to be investigated too. I agreed. I'll talk to the doctor so he can inform the authorities. This is a case for the police now. Dr. Hagen arrived half an hour later, as soon as he heard that Sonya had been admitted to the hospital. I explained everything I had found out. He shook his head in disbelief. In 25 years of professional experience, I have never seen a case like this. A combination of psychological trauma, family manipulation, and inappropriate medication. It's almost like a movie plot. I agreed with him bitterly, but it's my real life, doctor. 2 detectives from the criminal police arrived around 3 p.m. A man and a woman, both around 40, with that tired aura of people who have seen a lot. They took me into a separate room and asked me to tell everything from the beginning. It took me almost an hour to describe the last 6 months. The accident, the care, the mysterious medications, the discovery of the test results, the overdose that day. The detective, who introduced herself as Detective Carla Hayes, took detailed notes. Mr. Schneider, I will have to speak with your wife and her sister-in-law, and we will need to confiscate the entire medical file as evidence. I will also reopen the investigation of the hit and run. If it was really intentional, we need to find this Egon. I felt a mixture of relief and fear when I heard that. They spoke with Sonya first. They stayed in her room for almost 40 minutes. When they came out, their expression was serious. Then they went to Frieda. Morris and I followed them. When she saw the police officers, Frieda tried to flee. She literally stood up and ran toward the parking lot. The detectives followed her. A hospital security guard helped to block the exit. Frieda was detained, screaming, crying, saying she had done nothing wrong. Ms. Frieda Oliveira, you are being taken to the station to make statements regarding attempted manslaughter and false imprisonment by deception, Detective Hayes said, while putting handcuffs on her. Frieda looked at me with pure hatred. This is your fault, Art. You ruined everything. Sonya was better off like this, dependent, protected. You don't understand anything. Her screams echoed through the hospital corridor as she was led away. I returned to Sonya's room. She had heard her sister's screams. Does she really hate me that much? She asked with a broken voice. I sat down next to the bed. I think she hated her own life and projected that onto you. We fell silent. After a while, Sonya said, "Art, I'm going to learn to walk again. I'm going to do physical therapy. I'm going to recover. I'm going to prove that I deserve a second chance." In the following days, the police worked intensively on the case. They checked all surveillance cameras on Michigan Avenue from the day of the hit and run. 6 months later, it was difficult, but they found footage of a black car that intentionally drove at Sonya. They found a part of the license plate. With that, they tracked down Egon Cardoso, 40 years old, with a long criminal record for domestic violence, threats, and violation of a restraining order. Detective Hayes called me to the station to give me the news.
"We have located Egon. He lives in Joliet and works at a junkyard."
"We will arrest him tomorrow morning." I felt a mixture of relief and fear. This man had been the ghost that tormented my wife for months. Is he really dangerous? The detective nodded. He has a history of severe violence against 2 ex-partners. One of them was in the hospital for 3 weeks. When I told Sonya about Egon's impending arrest, she had a panic attack. Even in the hospital, surrounded by security guards and doctors, she trembled all over and hyperventilated. They had to lightly sedate her. "Art, what if he escapes? What if he finds out where I am and comes after me?" I held her hands tightly. "That won't happen. He will be arrested and pay for his actions. And you will get out of this bed and live again." Egon's arrest the next morning went without incident. He was at the junkyard when the police arrived. He tried to flee through the back exit but was surrounded. He resisted arrest. It took 3 police officers to immobilize him. At the station, faced with the evidence and Sonya's testimony, he confessed. She deserved it. She made a fool of me. She traded me for that old man. I just wanted her to feel a little of the pain she caused me. His confession was recorded and would serve as evidence in the trial. Detective Hayes told me he would likely get 10 to 15 years in prison for attempted manslaughter. "And Frieda?" I asked. "Her case is more complicated. We have the attempted manslaughter for the overdose today, but the rest will be hard to prove. Is your wife willing to testify against her own sister?" I looked out the station window. "I will talk to her." Sonya stayed in the hospital for 5 more days. During this time, she began physical therapy. The first time I saw her at the parallel bars, supported by the physical therapist, I cried. I couldn't hold back my tears. She was weak, her legs trembled, but she was standing. "Look, Art, I'm standing," she said with a tentative smile. It was the first real smile I had seen from her in months. The recovery was slow. The months of voluntary immobilization, combined with the effects of the medications, had severely weakened her musculature. The physical therapist, a young, energetic woman named Patricia, explained that it would take 3 to 6 months of intensive work before Sonya could walk normally again. But she has all the prerequisites to make a full recovery. There is no neurological damage. It's just a matter of strengthening the muscles. I attended all the sessions. I watched my wife fight against the pain, against the fatigue, against the guilt she carried with her. In some sessions, she cried out of frustration when she couldn't take more than a few steps. In others, she laughed with joy when she managed to stand longer without support. I was there for all of them, cheering her on, encouraging her, but maintaining an emotional distance that I couldn't yet overcome. Morris traveled from Denver 3 times that week and spoke with his mother for a long time. I didn't participate in these conversations. I gave them space to sort things out between mother and son. When he left the room, Morris came to me with red eyes. "Dad, she is consumed with remorse. I know you're hurt, and you have every right to be, but she really wants to make amends." I listened silently, not knowing what to reply. One evening, after Sonya was already asleep, the hospital psychologist called me for a chat. She was a lady in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a bun and red glasses. "Mr. Schneider, I know it's not my job to get involved more than necessary in the private lives of patients, but I would like to share some thoughts on your wife's case." I sat down on the chair in front of her, curious. "What your wife experienced we call complex trauma. The intentional hit and run, the threats from the attacker, the fear for the safety of the family, all this created a psychological state that neuroscience is only just beginning to understand better." She adjusted her glasses. When a person goes through such trauma, especially with persistent threats, the brain switches into a survival mode that may seem irrational to outsiders. "Are you telling me I should forgive her easily?" I asked with a hint of irritation. The psychologist shook her head. No, Mr. Schneider, I'm not saying that. What she did caused real harm to you, to your mental health, to the trust in your relationship. You have every right to be heard and to take the time you need to process that. What I am saying is that the situation is more complex than just the simple decision to lie. Your wife was under the influence of very strong medications, under death threats, in a state of constant panic. The decisions she made were not rational, because the rational part of her brain was compromised by the trauma and the chemistry. That doesn't absolve her of responsibility, but it contextualizes her actions. I sighed deeply. And what do I do with that? How do I rebuild trust with a person who deceived me for 6 months? Time and honest communication, the psychologist replied. If you decide to rebuild the relationship, it will require couples therapy, patience, and her willingness to do the necessary emotional work. And it also requires that you allow your wounds to be heard and validated. It's not easy and not quick, but it's possible if both of you want it. I thanked her for the conversation and left the room with even more doubts. Frieda's case went before the Superior Court 3 months later. In the meantime, she was in custody. Her defense tried to argue that she was only helping her sister, that the medications had been prescribed, that it was all a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. The report of the overdose, the analysis of the medications without a proper prescription, Sonya's detailed testimony about the months of manipulation. Sonya and I were called to testify. It was the first time I had seen Frieda since the day of her arrest. She was thin, her hair disheveled, without makeup. When she saw me enter the court, she screamed, "Art, please tell them I was only protecting my sister. You know I always took care of her." The bailiffs had to restrain her. The judge called for order in the court. My testimony lasted 2 hours. I told everything from the beginning. The accident, the care, the mysterious medications, the discovery of the truth. The prosecutor asked me, "Mr. Schneider, did the defendant ever show genuine concern for your wife's well-being?" I thought carefully before answering. In the beginning, yes. But over the months, I realized her behavior was more about control than care. When it was Sonya's turn to take the witness stand, she went up in a wheelchair. She still couldn't walk long distances on her own. The defense attorney tried to use this in Frieda's favor. "Your Honor, my client never prevented her sister from recovering. You see, the victim still needs a wheelchair. There was, and clearly is, a real medical condition." The prosecutor stood up immediately. "Objection. The medical reports have already proven that the dependence on the wheelchair was artificially prolonged by the inappropriate medications supplied by the defendant." Sonya gave moving testimony. She told of the forced medications, her sister's malicious comments, the intentional overdose. "My sister didn't protect me. She punished me for having a life that, in her opinion, I didn't deserve." Her words echoed in the room. I saw some jurors discreetly wipe away tears. Frieda shouted from the defendant's chair, "Liar! I always took care of you, always." The judge banged his gavel and demanded silence. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned with the verdict, my heart beat irregularly. Regarding the crime of attempted manslaughter, the court finds Ms. Frieda Oliveira guilty. Sonya squeezed my hand tightly. Regarding the crime of false imprisonment by deception, the court finds the defendant guilty. Frieda burst into tears. The sentence was 12 years in prison. As the bailiffs led her away, she screamed one last time, "You'll pay for this." "Sonya, one day I'll get out, and you'll pay for this." 2 months after Frieda's conviction, Sonya was permanently discharged from the hospital. She could already walk with a cane. She had physical therapy 3 times a week. She was only taking the necessary basic medications, properly prescribed by Dr. Hagen. The day of returning home was strange. The hospital bed was still in the living room, the grab bars, all the equipment that had been our daily life for 6 months. "I'm going to dismantle all this," I said as I helped her enter. Sonya looked around with a melancholic expression. "This is where I spent the worst months of my life, and in a way, the best." I looked at her, not understanding. "How the best?" She leaned on the cane and walked slowly to the window. "Because even though I was lying and pretending, the care you gave me was real. The love you showed was real. I didn't deserve it, but you gave it to me anyway." I fell silent. In the months since the revelation, we had started couples therapy with a psychologist recommended by the hospital. The sessions were difficult, painful. I expressed my grief, my feeling of being used. She took responsibility for her mistakes, but also explained the terror she had felt. Slowly, very slowly, something new was building between us. It wasn't like before. Maybe it never would be. But it was something new. I don't know if I can trust you again like I used to, Sonya, I said honestly. She turned to me, her eyes moist with tears. I know, and I don't expect you to trust me. I just hope you give me the chance to prove to you, day by day, that it's worth it. I nodded slowly. We'll try. One day at a time. She smiled weakly. One day at a time. We dismantled the hospital bed together. It was symbolic. In a way, it ended that phase and began a new one. Sonya insisted on helping, even though it was difficult. I have to do this, she said when I tried to stop her. We carried the parts of the bed to the building's storage room. When we returned to the apartment, it seemed larger, emptier, but also lighter. I'll make some coffee, she said, walking slowly into the kitchen. Egon's trial took place 4 months after Frieda's. He was charged with attempted manslaughter, stalking, and threatening behavior. His criminal history spoke against him. 2 previous convictions for domestic violence, violation of restraining orders, threats. The prosecutor presented a solid case with the camera footage, Sonya's testimony, and even managed to find witnesses who had seen the hit and run. Sonya didn't want to go to the trial. Art, I can't look him in the face. I can't. I understood, but her presence was important. You don't have to look at him. Look at me. I will be by your side the whole time. Morris came too. He sat on the other side of his mother. When we entered the courtroom and I saw Egon for the first time, I felt Sonya tremble all over. I held her hand tightly. I'm here. Egon had changed. The man who had been athletic and intimidating was now overweight, unkempt, with deep dark circles under his eyes. The months in jail had taken their toll, but when he looked at Sonya, I saw the same malice in his eyes. Look who it is. The little cripple can walk again. He spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. The judge banged his gavel. Defendant, one more comment like that, and you will be removed from the courtroom. The trial lasted 3 days. Witnesses were called, expert reports presented. Egon's defense tried to argue it was an accident. He hadn't seen Sonya crossing. But the images were clear. The car accelerated, intentionally changed lanes to hit her. There was no doubt. On the 3rd day, Sonya was called to testify. She walked to the witness stand without her cane, wanting to show that she had recovered. Mrs. Schneider, can you tell us what happened on March 23, 2017? The prosecutor began kindly. Sonya took a deep breath and told everything. The months of stalking before the accident, the anonymous calls, the threatening messages. That day, I was crossing Michigan Avenue in the crosswalk. The light was red for the cars. I saw the black car coming at high speed. For a second, our eyes met through the windshield. It was Egon, and he was smiling. The jury didn't take long to deliberate. 2 hours later, they returned with the verdict. Regarding the crime of attempted manslaughter, we find the defendant Egon Cardoso guilty. Sonya let out a sigh of relief. Regarding the crime of stalking, we find the defendant guilty. Regarding the crime of threatening behavior, we find the defendant guilty. The judge announced the sentence, 18 years in prison. As Egon was led away, he shouted at Sonya one last time, "Years go by fast, you bitch. When I get out, I'll find you again." The police officers dragged him out as he continued to shout threats. Sonya was pale and trembling. I took her out of the courtroom to get some fresh air. "He won't be getting out so soon," I said, trying to calm her. "And when he does, we will be prepared. We will get a lifetime restraining order. We will have proper security." But I knew these words were partially empty. The fear that Egon had planted in Sonya was too deep to be erased by a court verdict. That night, she had nightmares. She woke up screaming, saying he was at the window, that he was breaking into the apartment. I held her until she calmed down. "He's in prison, my love. He can't hurt you anymore." She cried on my shoulder. "But in 18 years we will be too old for him to care about us," I said, trying to bring some lightness to the situation. "I will be 80, you will be 76. We will be 2 annoying old people he won't even recognize." Sonya chuckled sadly. "Do you think we'll make it together until then?" The question caught me off guard. I looked at her in the darkness of the room. I don't know, Sonya, but we're trying, aren't we? She nodded. We are. We lay there for a long time, embraced in silence. The clock on the wall showed 3 a.m. Outside, the city was asleep. And for the first time in many months, I had the feeling that we might, just maybe, manage to overcome all this. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be quick. But it was possible. One day at a time, as we had promised ourselves. 6 months after Egon's conviction, life had found a new rhythm. Sonya no longer used a cane and walked normally. She had even resumed some activities she enjoyed. She started attending a dance class for seniors in the neighborhood twice a week. Nothing too intense, she said. Just moving my body, feeling the music. It reminds me of who I was before all this. I too had resumed some old hobbies. Every Saturday morning, I went to play dominoes with the friends from the building, something I had completely given up during the months of her care. The routine had regained lightness and spontaneity, but the couple's therapy sessions continued. The psychologist said we were making progress. The communication between us had improved significantly. One afternoon, Sonya asked me to sit down on the sofa. She looked serious. Art, I need to talk to you about something important. My heart raced. Was she going to ask for a divorce? After everything we had been through, after all the effort, had she perhaps decided it wasn't working? You can talk, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I received a letter from Frieda. Her words surprised me. A letter from prison? She nodded. Her lawyer delivered it yesterday. I haven't opened it yet. I wanted to open it here with you. I looked at Sonya, trying to understand what she was feeling. Do you want to open it? After everything she did? Do you think it's worth reading what she has to say? Sonya looked at the yellow envelope in her hands. She is my sister, Art. As terrible as the things she did were, she is still my sister. Sonya opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were 3 handwritten pages, Frieda's handwriting, which I recognized immediately. Sonya read silently at first. Tears began to run down her face. Then she started to read aloud to me. Dear sister, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, and I don't expect you to forgive me. What I did is unforgivable, driven by an envy and bitterness that I've been carrying around since my childhood. I spent my whole life comparing myself to you. You were beautiful. I was ordinary. You had talent for dancing. I had no talent for anything. You found a man who truly loved you. I only found men who used and left me. When Dad died and left you everything, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I felt pushed aside once again, thrown away, considered less important. When you had the accident, a sick part of me felt morbid satisfaction. Finally, you had something bad in your life too. Finally, you weren't perfect. And when I realized you were only pretending not to be able to walk, out of fear of Egon, I saw an opportunity to keep you dependent, to have control over you for the first time in my life. I know it's sick, I know it's wrong, but it's the truth. The letter concluded, I am in therapy here in prison. The psychologist says I have an untreated personality disorder, that my envy has become something pathological. I'm not using this as an excuse, only as an explanation. You don't have to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. But I needed you to know that deep down, I still love you. I've always loved you. And I hate that my love turned into something so destructive. Frieda. Sonya finished reading and fell silent. The tears flowed freely. I didn't know what to say. The letter was honest, raw, disturbing. What are you going to do? I finally asked. Sonya folded the pages carefully. I don't know. A part of me wants to tear up the letter and never think about it again. But another part understands that she is sick, that she has always been sick, and that I maybe never noticed the signs. In the following weeks, Sonya was thoughtful, distant. I knew Frieda's letter had deeply upset her. One evening at dinner, she finally brought it up. Art, I've decided to visit Frieda in prison. I almost choked on my food. Are you sure? After everything she did? She nodded slowly. Not to forgive her, not to make peace, but to have an honest conversation, to look her in the eye and say everything I need to say. Do you want me to come with you? I asked, not very enthusiastic about the idea. Sonya shook her head. No, I have to do this alone. But thank you for the offer. 3 days later, she left. The drive to the women's prison where Frieda was serving her sentence took almost 2 hours. I stayed at home, looking at the clock every 5 minutes. When Sonya finally returned, she was exhausted, but there was a peace on her face that I hadn't seen in a long time. "How was it?" I asked while preparing her a tea. Sonya sat down slowly on the sofa. It was necessary. We talked for almost an hour. She cried a lot and apologized 1,000 times. I made it clear that there is no justification for what she did, that she destroyed my trust, that our sisterly relationship died the day she tried to kill me with that overdose. And how did she react? Sonya took a sip of the tea. She accepted it. She said she understands, that she doesn't expect me to forgive her. She just wanted the chance to explain in person why she did what she did. It was painful to hear, Art. Painful to understand that envy can change a person so much. I took her hand. "You did what you thought was necessary. That's the most important thing. You know what's saddest?" Sonya continued. "It's the realization that if she had come to me and talked about her feelings, we might have been able to resolve things differently. I never knew she felt that way, that Dad had hurt her so much with his decisions. If I had known, I would have shared the inheritance with her. I would have tried to help, but she kept everything to herself until it exploded in the worst way." 2 months after the visit with Frieda, it was our 39th wedding anniversary. It had been a turbulent year, full of painful revelations, betrayal, fears, and rebuilding. I didn't know if we should celebrate or just let the date pass unnoticed. But on the morning of the day, I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee and toast from the kitchen. I found Sonya preparing breakfast. She had laid out the nice tablecloth, the one with the embroidered flowers that we only use on special occasions. "Good morning," she said with a tentative smile. 39 years. Who would have thought we'd make it this far after everything that happened, right? I sat down at the table, moved. "I wasn't sure if you wanted to celebrate." "I thought a lot about it," she said, pouring the coffee. "And I came to the conclusion that despite everything, despite the mistakes I made, your mistakes, the mistakes we both made over these years, we are still here. That deserves recognition." She was right. How many couples would survive what we had been through? The attempted murder, the simulated paralysis, the family manipulation, the trials, all of that could have completely destroyed us. But here we were, drinking coffee together on a sunny morning. After breakfast, we went for a walk in the neighborhood park. Sonya was now walking steadily without any sign of difficulty. We sat down on a bench near the artificial lake. "Art, I know I'm not the same woman you met 39 years ago. The trauma has changed a lot in me, but I still love you. I love you in a different, more mature, perhaps less idealized way, but it's true love." I looked at her. This woman who had been my partner for almost 4 decades. "I've changed too, Sonya. What we went through made me think a lot about trust, devotion, and the limits of love. But in the end, I choose to stay. I choose to rebuild, because despite everything, you are still the person I want to have by my side." We hugged there on the park bench, while children played around us and ducks swam in the lake. 3 weeks after our anniversary, I received a call from Morris. His voice sounded different, strange. "Dad, I need to talk to you and Mom in person. Can I come this weekend?" I was immediately worried. "Did something happen, my son? Is everything okay with you? With Juliana, with the kids?" He hesitated. "Everyone is fine, but it's about Grandma, Mom's mother. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Ermgard, was 91 years old and lived in a nursing home in Indianapolis. In recent years, she had developed advanced Alzheimer's and barely recognized her family. Sonya visited her every 3 months, always coming back sad and dejected." "What happened with Mrs. Ermgard?" Morris took a deep breath. "She passed away on Tuesday, Dad. Natural causes in her sleep. The home tried to contact Mom, but her phone number was outdated. They called me because I'm the next of kin in the register." I hung up the phone, shocked. How was I going to tell Sonya this? Her relationship with her mother had always been complicated. Mrs. Ermgard had been a strict, critical woman who had never approved of anything her daughters did, but she was still her mother. I took a deep breath and went into the living room, where Sonya was watching TV. "My love, I have to tell you something." The expression on my face must have betrayed my seriousness. "What's wrong?" "It's your mother. Morris just called. She passed away on Tuesday." Sonya froze for a moment, processing the information. Then she began to cry. But it wasn't a cry of deep sadness. It was something more complex. I knew this day would come, she said, sobbing. But I wasn't ready. I sat down next to her and put my arm around her shoulders. Morris is coming here on the weekend. We have to drive to Indianapolis and organize the funeral. That night, Sonya stayed up late, looking through old photo albums. Photos of her as a child with her mother, from her youth, from the wedding. You know what's sad, Art, she said, looking at a photo where she was about 10 years old, hugging Mrs. Ermgard. My mother spent the last 5 years without knowing who I am. When I visited her, she looked at me as if I were a stranger. And now she's gone, and I will never have a real conversation with her again. I held her while she cried. We always think we have more time, always. We traveled to Indianapolis on Friday. Morris accompanied us, leaving his family in Denver. The funeral was supposed to take place on Saturday morning. We stayed in a simple hotel near the cemetery. That night in the hotel room, Sonya cried a lot, not just for her mother, but for everything. It was as if the death of Mrs. Ermgard had opened the floodgates of all the accumulated emotions of the last year. I wasted so much time, Art. So much time pretending, lying, hiding. I could have enjoyed my mother's last lucid years more. But I was so consumed by the fear of Egon, so trapped in that bed, in that lie. And now she's gone, and I will never get that time back. I held her while she cried. We always think we have more time, always. The funeral was small. Mrs. Ermgard had outlived almost all her friends and relatives of her generation. There were the 3 of us, 2 distant cousins from Fort Wayne, and 3 employees from the nursing home who had grown fond of her. The pastor held a short but respectful ceremony. When the coffin was lowered, Sonya broke down in tears. Morris held her on one side, I on the other. After the funeral, we went to the nursing home to collect Mrs. Ermgard's personal belongings. There were only a few things. Some clothes, photos, a rosary, a music box that no longer worked. The director of the home, a small round woman in her 60s, brought us into a small room. Folks, Mrs. Ermgard left something for you, an envelope that she gave me about 6 years ago, when she was still lucid. She asked me to hand it over to the family after her death. Sonya took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, written in her mother's careful handwriting, although the tremor of old age was already visible. My dear Sonya and my dear Frieda, if you are reading this, I am finally at rest. I want you to know that, although I was a strict and demanding mother, I have always loved you both deeply. My biggest regret is that I didn't show this love more clearly. The letter continued. I know that I left an unequal inheritance. I left Sonya everything because I thought Frieda was stronger and better able to manage on her own. I see now that it was a mistake. I caused a resentment that could have consequences I cannot imagine. If I could turn back time, I would divide everything in half, no matter what practical reasons I gave to justify my choice. I hope you both can forgive each other and stick together. Sisters are a rare gift in life. In love, Mom. The drive back to Chicago was silent. Sonya held her mother's letter pressed to her chest, looking out the car window. Morris drove, focused, respecting his mother's grief. I sat in the back seat, thinking about how the actions of one generation influence the next in ways we cannot foresee. If Mrs. Ermgard had divided the inheritance equally, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe Frieda wouldn't have developed that resentment. She knew, Sonya said suddenly, breaking the silence. My mother knew she had planted a bad seed between me and Frieda. That's why she left this letter. It was the apology she didn't have the courage to make in life. Morris looked in the rearview mirror. Mom, Grandma is not to blame for what Aunt Frieda did. The decisions were Aunt Frieda's. Sonya shook her head. No, my son, she is not to blame. But the wounds she caused created the breeding ground for the envy to grow. When we arrived home, it was already after 9 p.m. Morris decided to sleep on the sofa bed. I'm not driving back to Denver tonight. I want to stay with you. The 3 of us sat in the living room, drinking tea and talking about Mrs. Ermgard, about the good and bad memories, about how complicated and imperfect family is. Do you know what I've learned from all this? Sonya said, looking at me and Morris. That secrets and silence destroy more than the truth, as painful as it may be. I nodded in agreement. If you had told me about Egon's threats from the beginning, if Frieda had spoken about her feelings of rejection, if your mother had been honest about her decisions, maybe none of this would have happened, Morris added. And if I had visited more often, I might have noticed that something was wrong. We looked at each other, 3 people carrying their own guilt, their own mistakes, but also their own love. We can't change the past, I said finally, but we can learn from it and decide that from now on, it will be different. Sonya held out her hands, took mine and Morris's. Let's make a pact. No more secrets between us, no more lies, not even for protection. Absolute honesty no matter how much it hurts. Morris squeezed his mother's hand. Agreed. I squeezed her hand too. Agreed. 1 year has passed since that day in the hospital when Dr. Hagen told me to call the police. A year full of therapy, rebuilding, painful learning about forgiveness and boundaries. Sonya has fully recovered physically. She is working part-time again at a dance school in the neighborhood, teaching children. She says helping the little ones discover movement is therapeutic for her. I am still retired, but I started a volunteer project at the CTA, where I teach young trainees in train maintenance. I've discovered that teaching gives me a sense of purpose, makes me useful in a different way. Morris visits us twice a month, always bringing the grandchildren. The house has children's laughter, noise, and life again. One Saturday morning, we received a certified letter. It came from the women's prison. My heart clenched. Sonya opened it carefully. Inside was an official notification. Frieda had been moved to a work release program for good behavior. She was allowed to work during the day and returned to the prison to sleep. The letter also stated that she had asked for permission to write to us again, but we would have to sign a form to authorize the contact. What do you want to do? I asked Sonya. She was silent for a long time, holding the paper. I don't know if I'm ready to have regular contact with her, but maybe we can approve 1 letter every 6 months, something controlled, with clear boundaries. I looked at my wife, impressed by her maturity. Are you sure? After everything she did? Sonya nodded. She is sick. She is being treated. She is trying to get better. I can't just pretend she doesn't exist. But I can't open the doors completely either. We signed the form authorizing limited correspondence. 2 weeks later, Frieda's first letter under the new regime arrived. It was short and respectful. She shared that she was working in a sewing workshop at the prison, that she continued to go to therapy twice a week, and had read many books on pathological envy and personality disorders. It ended with the words, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope that with time, you can understand that I am sincerely trying to become a better person." Sonya read the letter aloud to me. When she finished, she folded the paper carefully. You know what's strange? I don't feel anger towards her anymore. I feel pity. Pity for all that she lost because of her own bitterness. I hugged my wife. That's growth, my love. You are healing. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We are healing. Together. 3 months after the meeting with Laura, an unusual contact came about. A journalist and author named Robert Cam had read about the case in the newspapers and wanted to write a book about our story. It would be important to educate people about family abuse, psychological trauma, and how fear can literally paralyze us, he explained to us at a meeting in a cafe. Sonya was hesitant. Our story is very painful, very personal. I don't know if it should be turned into some kind of entertainment for others. Robert shook his head. It wouldn't be entertainment. It would be a serious, respectful report, focusing on the psychological and social aspects of the case. How many women live under the threat of violent ex-partners? How many families hide pathological dynamics out of shame or fear? Your story can help other people recognize similar situations and seek help. We asked for time to think. That night, we talked about the proposal for a long time. Art, what do you think? Should we lay our lives bare like this? I thought carefully before answering. I think it depends. If it's done respectfully and without sensationalism, our story could really help someone, but only if you feel comfortable with it. You're the one who experienced the greatest trauma. Sonya was silent, looking out the window. Finally, she said, I'll do it on one condition. That a portion of the royalties be donated to an organization that helps victims of domestic violence, and that the book makes it clear that fear is no excuse for lying to the one who loves you, but that it also takes empathy to understand why people make wrong decisions when they are terrified. I agreed. Those are fair conditions. We called Robert back and presented our conditions. He accepted without hesitation. We spent the next 3 months being interviewed, reviewing drafts, and ensuring the story was told with precision and respect. It was painful to relive everything in detail, but it was also cathartic in a way. It was as if we were officially closing that chapter of our lives to begin a new one. The book was published 1.5 years after that day in the hospital. The publisher organized a small event at a bookstore in downtown Chicago. We didn't expect many people, but to our surprise, the room was full. There were curious journalists, but also many women who had experienced similar situations and identified with Sonya's story. A lady in her 60s approached her after the reading. "Mrs. Schneider, I pretended to have severe fibromyalgia for 10 years because my ex-husband had threatened to kill me if I tried to leave. I pretended to be so sick that I couldn't even get out of bed for days. It was my way of protecting myself, of ensuring someone always stayed near me. Reading your story showed me that I wasn't alone in this madness." Sonya hugged the lady, with tears in her eyes. "Did you have the courage to get out of that situation?" The woman nodded. "Yes, I did. He died of a heart attack 3 years ago. I am finally free, but I carry the guilt of having wasted a decade of my life on a lie." Sonya held her hands. "The guilt is not ours. The guilt belongs to the one who threatened us, who terrorized us so much that we thought we had no other choice. But it is also our responsibility to heal and move on." Morris was at the event with his whole family. The grandchildren ran around between the bookshelves. He approached me with a copy of the book in his hand. "Dad, I know it was hard for you to lay all this bare, but I'm proud. Proud of how you overcame it. How you turned pain into something that can help others." I hugged my son, feeling a lump in my throat. "Thanks, my son. That means a lot to me." At the end of the event, Robert called us aside. "I just received confirmation. The book is being translated into Spanish and English. Your story will reach many more people than we imagined." I looked at Sonya, who was holding my hand. "We never thought our suffering could turn into something so positive," she said. Robert smiled. "Sometimes that's exactly what the world needs. Real stories from real people who have survived the impossible." Today, 2 years after that day in the hospital, I wake up next to Sonya in a normal bed, without medical equipment, without care routines. She moves, opens her eyes, smiles at me. "Good morning, old man," I smile back. "Good morning, old woman." It's a joke we invented, a way of reminding ourselves that we are growing old together, that we chose to stay, despite everything. We get up, have breakfast together in the sunny kitchen. She tells me about the dance class she will teach in the afternoon, about a new student who is so afraid to move that she reminds her of herself. I'll be patient with her. I'll show her that it's possible to overcome the fear. I tell her about the new project at the CTA, about the trainee who stands out. He reminds me of myself at his age. Eager, dedicated, afraid of making mistakes. In the afternoon, we go for a walk in the park. It's a ritual we created after everything. Walking together, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking. Just enjoying being alive and free. We pass the bench where we sat on our anniversary, the lake where the ducks swim. "Do you regret staying with me?" Sonya asks suddenly. I stop and look at her. "Never. And you?" She shakes her head. "Never. But I regret having lied, having put you through all that." I take her hand. "I know, and I have forgiven you. Not completely. Not in the way it was before, because we will never be the way we were before. But I have forgiven you enough to build something new with you." She squeezes my hand. Something new is all I could wish for. When we come home in the evening, there is a message on the answering machine. It's from Detective Hayes. "Mr. Art, Mrs. Sonya, I'm calling to inform you that Egon has received a sentence extension for bad behavior in prison. 5 years were added to the original sentence. He won't be getting out so soon." Sonya hears the message and sighs with relief. 5 more years of peace. I agree. 5 more years. That night, lying in bed, Sonya asks, "Art, if you could go back in time, would you change anything?" I think about the question. I would change everything that caused suffering. But I wouldn't change the end, because the end brought us here, to this moment. 2 old people who have learned that love isn't perfection, but a choice. And I choose you. Every day. She snuggles against my shoulder. I choose you too. Every day. I close my eyes. Feel her pleasant weight next to me. Hear her breathing calm as sleep sets in. I thought that caring for her for 6 years was the biggest challenge of my life. But I discovered that the real challenge was rebuilding trust. forgiving without forgetting, loving without naivety. And in this challenge, we are winning, one day at a time, one choice at a time. Together. If you have stayed this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you are going through something similar, know that it is possible to survive. It is possible to rebuild. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but it's possible. And sometimes beyond the pain, something new and valuable is waiting to be discovered. Subscribe to Clara's Stories for more true stories that touch the heart. And tell me in the comments, would you have had the strength to start over after such a betrayal? Please also consider a donation so we can continue to present such honest and profound stories to you.